Welcome to another episode of War Hero to Superhero. Hopefully you're watching this live. If not, go to podopolo.com to go watch us in the podcast or YouTube. I want to thank you guys for going over and joining. This is the Superhero Battle Room, digitally speaking. That's why it pixelates back and forth, because if it was real, I would have pressed too many buttons already. So we are bringing in our next War Hero to Superhero today. I am so super excited. I've been wanting her to get on an interview for months. I had to pull her teeth. So if you see a couple missing, it's okay. Just kidding aside. She is an Army veteran that basically just kept transforming from war hero to superhero. But how did she go over and get there? We're going to talk about that today. So in our Superhero Battle Room, we are introducing AshleyMarie Gorbulja-Maldonado, and she'll correct her name when she joins online because, man, that was a mouthful. So thank you, Ashley, for going over and joining. So very much appreciated for you going over and joining our Superhero Battle Room today.
Well, you were very, very close. Gorbulja-Maldonado. But I'll give you an A- on that. A- on that. That was pretty good. Thank you for the awesome introduction. I'm very excited to be here and have a great conversation.
All right. So we'd love you to first tell us your war hero story, like when you entered service, what branch, what you did, and then also the transformation out of the service.
Sure. So my story really begins prior to joining in 2011. While I was in high school, I not only found myself as an old soul, but also working in my dad's machine shop and really kind of coming to terms with recession. So I quickly learned that the economy has a lot to do with jobs, and that regardless, even if I was in high school, it was going to impact me long term because it didn't look like I had any prospects for college. And that, coming from my father being a small businessman who in the 80s, when, his father's machine shop was, booming, could, have all of these, accolades and go to the schools, brand new cars, stuff like that, right? So that wasn't the case for me, and it wasn't going to be the case for my younger brothers. And of course, as any parent could probably empathize with, is it stinks, right? Because you want the best for your children. So I was, for some reason, very self-aware, and I started doing some research and doing, I guess, a scholarship overhaul, right? Like, how am I getting into school? I had a pretty basic GPA. I was like a 3.1 student, believe it or not.
That's super high, but for me, it's nothing.
I didn't really have a super high GPA. I was going to a tech school. There was a lot of uncertainties, and the National Guard provided some opportunities, not only to pay for me to go to state school, but to really give me a leg up. So my story really starts from not having a whole lot of options. And I found myself, raising my right hand in 2011 after what really was my first semester in college. I put myself through school at that point. And so, I raised my right hand. I was very excited. I wouldn't go to training, like most, you got to wait for your shift date. So I had a 6-month gap.
Ooh.
Still went to finish my schooling, was continuing to rock and roll, and which is the next chapter, if you will, in this little microcosm is, a few weeks later after raising my right hand, I ended up becoming a military sexual trauma statistic. So I found myself, kind of knocked on my feet, not knowing what to do. I'm 18 years old, and of course, I'm like believing figures of trust, and they really kind of let me down because I didn't know any better, right? Mm-hmm. So I found myself at a loss. I was in an ROTC program. I lost potentially what would have been a commission. I was kicked out of the program. I was, told I was just super duper crazy and that I was a liar. So, it was 5 against 1. And what was a shame is, even though I went through my basic training, AIT, I came back and I would then go on to serve with one of my rapists for 5 years. So there's kind of just that weird sidebar story, right? So I got into the service, was going to school, working multiple jobs, doing everything I could so that I could, put myself in a better position. And that meant obtaining my education, securing, job opportunities, trying to build trust and build up those relationships, because obviously for anyone who has gone through a traumatic experience, it takes a while to build trust up. So I had some problems with relationships. I had problems with coping. I was depressed. I was anxious. So despite all of the outward accomplishments, those came from a place of, I will never let anyone, bring me down again. Like I wanted to prove people wrong. And as weird as that motivation and inclination comes from, I wouldn't be the person I am today if some of these series of events didn't happen the way that they did. So getting, fast forward, I'm in my military career, and 3.5 years I've become an NCO. I'm in military police. I'm doing the best I can, walking on eggshells just here and there, right? But I was training soldiers and I was empowering others, and I became an advocate for benefits. And next thing I knew, opportunities opened up in education, where now I'm at a community college and I'm helping veterans with their GI bills, and I'm getting involved with all these VA benefits. And then I'm helping start an American Legion post on campus. I'm volunteering in a prison to help women through military leadership and structure. I'm doing all these things because they set my soul on fire. And what happened was it started to reveal my true passion. So went from medical doctor to physical therapy to public health. So now I'm the happy owner of 3 degrees, debt-free, without a GI Bill scholarship.
Wow.
And, while doing that, I learned a lot about myself. I had a lot of demons to fight. I had to worry about how am I going to prioritize myself. I finally took a chance. I went on an internship. I founded a business while sitting on a park bench, created, this brand and network. And the past 2 years have been a whirlwind. It's like I just launched my new website and I see it scrolling down at the bottom. So thanks for the plug. And I was just doing this thing for my business, but then I get a phone call after running for Miss Veteran America and, advocating for women veterans and doing all this awesome stuff. I get a call from the Undersecretary for Benefits, and he says, "Ashley, we want you to join our team." And I said, "To do what, sir?" And he goes, "What do you want to do?" So
Wow.
I tell you that story, and it's a lot. And despite some of the peaks, I can promise you that there were some lows. And by real lows, I mean, I had to really find, a trampoline. There's a young lady by the name of Charlene Scales who I listened to a beautiful presentation. It was called Her Why. And she always referred to my rock bottom had a trampoline. Especially when you find your passion, it becomes a trampoline. So no matter how low you become, the thing that sets your soul on fire will push you to the next level. And just like entrepreneurship, it's ups and downs, but it's the mindset that matters. That's a little bit about me. Sorry, that was probably way too long.
No, it wasn't. We usually go about 25 minutes in this person's story. You just went so fast through it. So I want to unpack that a little bit because that's a lot to go over and to deal with. So you went into ROTC, the MST goes over and happens and everything else. So what about when you got out of the service? Were you at that healing point to jump into all these things that came into your life, or was there any lower point before that transformation? Because it was so quick, so fast. Are you still in the healing process? Have you gone over and got to at least to a point of that trampoline coming up? Or because that's huge to go over and deal with. 18 years old and you're not even in the service, and then you're like 5 years with the person. Man, I'm like, that just gives me heart attack like mode, just in that sense. I'm like, I get stressed out on an email, and you're dealing with the person that sexually assaulted you. It's like, I've gone through that too, and we discussed that, but I don't deal with that person every day. You were dealing with that person for 5 years. That's roughly 1,800 days to deal with that person day in and day out. Wow.
Right.
So where are you at in that process? Was it after getting out of service was the healing?
So it was a weird thing that happened. So right around the time I was going to graduate with my dual undergraduate degree, so this would have been 2016 or so, I had come to a point where I was out of control. And by out of control, it was me trying to control everything. Does that make sense? So because of the lack of control and the inconsistent amount of not being able to trust people, not being able to know what's going to happen next, trying to overplan, keeping the blinders on. By 2016, I had found out that, going through this physical therapy track, that I was never going to get into physical therapy school. Despite being an all-star academia, it wasn't good enough. And something about that phrase still today just grinds my gears, because I attached so much value into accomplishing that one thing that I didn't pay attention to myself. I didn't practice self-care. I was trying to just push through it. And something happened that day when I remember putting through that GPA calculator and then finding out that like I would have had to have retake classes. Like I would have had to wait on this 2-year waiting list. I wasn't going to get into U.S. Army Baylor. I was never going to commission as an officer this way. And I couldn't even get a conditional release to work in the military, even up to the literally 3 days before I got out of the service in November 2019.
Wow.
So like those things kind of just have always pushed themselves out. But in 2016, I had like a nervous breakdown. Like I had a complete utter breakdown. Like I just remember being so numb. And, you know, in 2014, 2015, I'm a huge advocate for, you know, counseling. And I went and I sought counseling, and, you know, I took that break, and that was probably the worst mistake I could have made, because I was like, oh, I'm stronger than this. Like, I'm going to muscle through it. And I thought to myself, I have to do, oh, gosh. So I was planning a wedding. I was engaged. I was trying to own a home. I was doing all of these adulting, right? Like air quotes. Yeah. And I just broke. I broke in 2016. I was running on fumes. I wasn't taking care of myself. I lost so much weight. I was in a bad place. And, you know, that was right after I finally kind of got away from my assailant. Think about that. Like, so what ended up happening was, even throughout my military career, I never really escaped it. Just because I didn't see that person, and even though we could have, you know, we're in separate platoons, it didn't mean that like I didn't come across him, didn't have to walk across him across the halls, right? All of his friend group. So later on, when I got inline promoted for a staff sergeant, and this would have been, let's see, 2000, going into 2000, late 2017, early 2018. I got promoted to staff sergeant, and it didn't matter where I went. I had a NCO try and blackmail me because he thought that he was better than me. He didn't like my leadership style. He thought he could just kind of curtail and do whatever he wanted. You know, that stuff didn't go away. So to answer your question, I constantly have to work through it every day. Like I have more self-awareness now of like what my triggers are. I will tell you that in 2019, May 2019, I finally sat down with an MST coordinator and I filed my claim for VA disability prior to exiting service. And that was really hard. Like I had found paperwork from like, you know, we're talking like 7 years prior, right? And I hadn't looked at, and I had compressed and buried. And it was like reopening Pandora's box. So within the past year and a half, I have definitely undergone some very interesting, stressful, just triggers, just reopening everything. And I will say that in end of January, February, I finally got my claim back from the VA, and I was denied for MST. Like 100% I was denied. Like I had nothing. And I couldn't believe it. And I was like, again, it's just reopened everything. So I just sent in an appeal. I've been working with the American Legion to like rebuttal that, because they said that I didn't have any symptomology of PTSD. I was like, I avoid large crowds. Like I don't like large crowds. I will put up with large crowds. Like you'll see me at an event, but I'm miserable. Like there's like a necessary evil, right?
Yeah.
It was crazy. I couldn't believe it. They denied me all on like one parameter, that I didn't exhibit avoidance. And I was like, your notes say I exhibited avoidance in my original exam. Couldn't believe it. So now I'm like fighting again for some form of validation that it happened to me. And now I'm seeing like stories and all of, you know, this research, and I am an advocate for women. So it's a continuous process. You know, I have good days and I have bad days, but I locked that box for a long time. And I still tried to lock that box even when I had that 2016, what I refer to as like my breaking point, my trampoline. So at that point, I had to do a complete paradigm switch. It was, I can't go this route. And what was so fascinating about that is, so this was towards the end. I was going to graduate in December. So this would have been a fall of 16? Yeah, fall of 16, somewhere around there. And I got, oh my God, I've got like $5,000 worth of scholarships. Like, I don't know what I'm going to do with these. And most people don't know that my master's in public health, however, was a contingency plan in my like life binder, which is again like another symbolic way of me controlling my life. Had this public health thing. I was like, oh my gosh, like this is for me. This is really great. So I was glad that I found it. Next thing I know, I did a Hail Mary play to Northeast Ohio Medical University, and I basically got, specially admitted because I had a terrible GRE, like a terrible GRE. Like, I'm dyslexic. A lot of people don't know I have a learning disability. So despite overcoming all obstacles and education and not understanding really like my disability until like the end of my college days, I realized, wow, I was really lucky. I was really lucky. So I threw down $5,000 and I took 3 electives for my master's class and got provisionally admitted in the summer of 2017. And then in 2017, I got injured. I got injured on duty during annual training. And then I would then go ahead and then realize that again, it didn't matter what I did, but I just felt like a number because when I hurt my knee, nobody believed me. Nobody believed me. My male peers thought I was faking my injury because I just happened to be a chick. It was obnoxious. And now I have 20% sarcastic disability because my knee's all messed up. It only took a year of profile and surgeries. But yeah, like, there you go. I just unloaded some more stuff, but it hasn't been easy. My military career was less than perfect. I had my highs, I had my lows, but I was always reminded that there was always going to be this factor if it wasn't good enough. And I needed to be in control of what I couldn't control. And that was just accepting that knowledge. And you can't defeat an enemy with an outpost inside your head.
So what made you the transformation? Because when I see you out there, you are that superhero. You go out every day, you go over and shine. You're willing to go be vulnerable and that type of thing. Is there any particular thought pattern, mantra, spiritual thing? What goes over and made you change that mindset? Because in a sense, we get told as MST, we're the victim. And guess what? When we in that mantra and victim is I'm accepting that I'm this. When I change to victor, there's an or statement. I can make that difference. So where did your or statement come into that particular game? What made you go to the point you broke? And then now this transformation story, because I would have never known. You were a beautiful, intelligent girl that was thriving everywhere, out there helping people, really going over and doing that. And you are still today. It doesn't matter what people say, but what made you make that mindset to make that change? What makes you go over and fight?
So I was approaching my 25th birthday, and I was kind of at this weird crossroads where I had applied for this internship at the Washington Center, and I think many veterans can relate to having some form of imposter syndrome, or not fully recognizing like what we do and all of the things that we do and the remarkable state of doing those things. But we just think of them as these are just normal things that I do, right? So there was a lot of self-doubt, and I never gave myself that credit. And it wasn't until literally the last day before a deadline, and I never considered myself a procrastinator, but I had applied to this internship, and I said, there's no way in hell I could be 1 in 25 in the country to get this internship fully paid to go to DC and live and do all these things. And I remember I had got that acceptance letter, and I became that 1 in 25. And they had told me your interview was so impressive, and we could tell that you had some form of imposter syndrome. I was like, I don't even know what that is. I had to look it up. I was like, what? I was like, I'm in my master's. Like, I don't know what this is. And there was this moment where I had this it's kind of this epiphany. And followed by that epiphany, I remember going into work, and I had been part-time working and running a community college veteran service program. I have been doing all of these things way above and beyond, managing all my coursework, 3 jobs, all the stuff. And I told my supervisor, hey, I got this 10-week internship. I want to take a sabbatical. I want to take, a break. You don't have to pay me. It's fine. I just want to make sure I have a job and come back. And they go, no. I was like, I'm sorry, what? It's like, I've been working here 5 years. What? I was like, we've been fighting full time for me. They were just like, no. And it was just HR was like, no, well, we won't do that. And I said, that's crazy.
Wow.
Okay. Well, I'm putting in my notice. And they were like, oh. So I left my job May 30th, right after my 25th birthday.
Mm.
And I didn't know what was going to happen. It was the first time I was to the wind. I, had my National Guard job, but obviously that wasn't my full-time job.
No.
And I didn't have any means of income at that point. I was like, okay, like this is it. This was just kind of like my second leap of faith. It was my second act. And I found myself in Washington, D.C., and I was sitting in on some of these internship classes. And I remember the instructor very clearly. It was Christy. She was saying something along the lines of like, you have to embrace your awesomeness. And I thought that was super cliche and like really weird. Something sunk in during some of that coursework. And I was walking through DC, and I had never felt such a greater sense of purpose. I was at the American Legion doing an internship in employment education. I was creating and reviewing, policies and programs. And I was like, wow, like I can do anything I want to. Like I could. Like, it was at that point where I was receiving so much mentorship that people were like, why don't you start your own business? What's stopping you? Like, why aren't you pressing the start button? And I didn't have a good answer. And I remember sitting on that bench where, of course, looking over the White House, I'm eating my lunch. Like, I still try and go there even now that I work at the VA and I'm like a block or two away. But I go and sit on that bench. And I remember just kind of having this patriotic, Spider-Man epiphany, like, with great power comes great responsibility, right? Like totally superhero. And I just was like, I have to own my story, and I can help other people tell their stories because I have an awesome story and I can inspire other people to be awesome. And to educate, like I come from an education background. I'm good at connecting people. I'm a social entrepreneur. I'm all of these things. And I needed to just tell myself that I was, and I needed to switch how I was talking. My self-talk was terrible. And since that day, I've been on all the time. And don't get me wrong, like when I shut down, I'm watching Netflix and I'm like watching Ancient Aliens. Like that's who I am as a person, right? So I'm serious. But there was this point of just self-reflection and being away from others. There was nobody really like trying to, push their agenda on me. And I was like, this is who I am. And this is who I want to be. And I'm not letting anyone stop me. And since then, the mantra that I have taken on is I will, watch me. I have spent a lot of time in my life, people telling me I can't do something, whether it's because what's in between my legs or it's lack of experience or X, Y, and Z, fill in the blank. And I was tired of hearing it. And since then, I have to come to terms with, I just turned 27 years old and I'm doing more than I think an exceptional amount of my cohort is doing. And that's okay. And that's me. That's my story. And if I can inspire other people to, hit that marker and turn that victim to victor, because all day, like you can have your victories, but you have to be able to make sure that that mindset is there to match it. Because if not, you're just beating a drum to the wrong rhythm.
And that was a beautiful way you spinned my words. So that was gorgeous right there and then. So that was
like that. Yeah.
Pretty sweet. So you can do anything. You're a fast learner. All right. So as a superhero, how do you help others transform? Tell us more about Guide on Education, because there's so much content that you put out there. And I'm like, I'm envious. I'm like, how do you keep going over and helping people and so much and being on there? So what's the end goal of Guide on Education? So walk me through as like a customer. And I'm like, hey, I go to your website. I'm like, what am I looking for? I know you target military. I know you target veterans and whatnot, but where do you start with them? So walk me through the process.
So Guide on Education Consulting was my take on not only inspiring others, educating, but connecting them to resources and information and bridging the gap or the perceivable misunderstanding between civilians or non-military folk to military community. And part of my background, not only working in higher education, but developing programs and marketing, communications. So these are just some of those consistent themes that will run through Guidon. Now, in and of itself, I build veteran programs, I build communities, and I build people, right? So that's the big mantra, right? Mm-hmm. I help people tap into the military community, and that comes from all facets. Now, Guidon itself, for our military viewers, a Guidon more or less likely was the flag or the pendant that was at your first formations, and it's symbolic across all branches. Mm-hmm. And it's also a play on words. So one of the things that I used to do a lot in when I was working in higher ed was explain things, breaking it down Barney style. So a Guidon version is a guide on the military, a guide on military spouses, a guide on education, a guide on employment. So it was my way of showing people that there are an easy like stepping stone or methodology to understanding this community. It was just a matter of connecting people. So a lot of the content that you'll see, because I am on Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook. I haven't really merged to Twitter. I manage social media accounts. I manage social media accounts for the Veterans Benefit Administration. I understand the importance of Twitter, not my platform. So with that being said, those are the three. So LinkedIn, Facebook, and LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram, excuse me. Right. So I'm on those platforms and I'm putting out content, and a lot of my content comes from not only following other military organizations, but exposing networks that wouldn't necessarily be in the military organization network. So that's where a lot of my considerations for content. So for example, I've been sharing on my personal accounts. I have a public LinkedIn and a public Facebook page. I share a lot of empowerment stories. I'm very involved in understanding and continuous learning of diversity inclusion, human-centered design. So you'll see a lot of my content that really tries to captivate storytelling. And also different resources or different ways of thinking about how we include others in the conversation, how we share that story. When I'm speaking to my clients, my job is to help them curate content that's representative of their mission. And if their mission happens to align with continuously reaching out to the military market, then they fit, bullseye. And that's what I'm there to do. I always tell folks, I am the Jiminy Cricket and you're Pinocchio. Like, I am the hero in the story. Or I'm sorry, they are the hero in the story. I am the whimsical advisor, and I'm here to make your dreams the reality. Even if that means, telling you some hard truths, and that's okay. Like, that's what I do as a consultant. So Guidon Education Consulting is broken into consulting, workshops, and public speaking. But in regards to products, I build social media content, communications and marketing plans. I do strategic planning, building programs, and curriculum. So I pretty much help people take things that may have a bit of a rocky foundation and help them get all the way up to finishing the roof. And maybe bringing some people in for some food. That's kind of my thing. So that's a little bit about that.
That's what a lot of veterans need when they go over and do their businesses and things of that nature, and to get out that social consciousness. So let's jump into our last question for the day. Wow, echoing, fun. All right, so last thing is our superhero tactics. We want you to share 3 superhero tactics you ever would have gave yourself or to others as you work with them.
3 superhero tactics. Okay. Can you repeat the question one more time? I want to make sure.
So another way to reword it, if I can minimize my echoing, another way to reword it is like, if you were 18 again, and you took your 27-year-old self and put yourself in there, what words of wisdom would you give yourself to deal with those future trials? Or if somebody's coming to you and they've gone through those trials, or they're starting a business, wherever angle you want to do is, what would you give that soldier to mentor them? Like 3 main tactics that you give them that they could hold on to.
Okay, so that makes sense. All right, so if I were to share, a page out of my book and it be a part of someone else's survival guide, I would encourage, first and foremost, like, check in with yourself every day. Check in with how you feel, and don't be apologetic for who you are. Like, don't apologize for being yourself. Don't apologize for asking questions. Like, don't dismiss your curiosity in life. You know, whether it's one, reflecting on yourself every day about how you feel, the decisions you make, don't overthink them. That's like the worst thing you could possibly do. If I could go back and tell myself at 18, Ashley, quit overthinking everything and just do it, I probably would have saved myself a lot of anxiety and heartache. So the first lesson would be to check in with yourself. And maybe the second lesson would be, don't apologize for being yourself. Like, be authentically you all the time, because the right people will come to you. Like, don't ever try and fit in somebody else's box. I don't like boxes. I don't like circles. I don't like squares. I don't like triangles. Okay. You be whatever shape you want to be, whatever color you want to be, but be you, right? So check in with yourself, be authentic, and last but not least, continue to challenge yourself. Challenge yourself. As much as I did in these past few years, my self-talk wasn't there, and there's probably more things I could have done and could have made an impact if I had challenged my own paradigm, if I had challenged my thought processes a little bit more. So it kind of ties into the first one, but overall, check in with yourself, right? Self-care, be authentically you, right? Don't make excuses for who you are. And then finally, challenge yourself. Challenge yourself, whether that's learning a new skill, it's challenging your thought process, and just continue to learn. Those would be my three. If I could go back and tell myself those things, I think I would have maybe fallen on maybe a different path. Who knows? But I don't think I'd be the same person. So I don't know if I'd want to go do that.
Well, let's pin them on the wall and take them for today on forward.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so I want to thank you for joining me, Ashley, to go over and watch. Not watch, for you to come. Wow, I'm getting confused with my audience. Awesome. So thank you for coming over and being on our show. For the people that are watching, now my mind's back. For the people that are watching, if you want to take Ashley's message to the next level, to go over and to uplift it up, to have that voice to be heard, this is just not a Facebook Live. You're like, say what? It's more than that. It's actually a podcast, and it's actually a TV show. And the TV show is separate from the podcast. So all you have to do is to get Ashley uplifted to the show is give 3 seconds of your time. We'd prefer you to listen to 32 minutes and 47 seconds of the entire interview as the clock is ticking right now. But if you don't have that much time, 3 seconds gives a view. And in 72 hours, if Ashley gets the most views, then she gets uplifted to our show next month, which our average audiences are going from 11 to 14,000 and growing. We want to get the message out there of these war heroes transforming the superheroes, so you, the watchers, can make that transformation too. So we love you to give 3 seconds of time today. So go over and connect with Ashley on Guide on Education. We're going to put the comments in the feed, and then we're going to close out and give Ashley a potting shot. So let's see whoever we're putting in the comments. All right, Sarah went over and said hello to you. She's one of our good followers.
Hi, Sarah.
Yep. She said it took 9 years to file for it, and paperwork was awful. She's been working with the disability claims. She just shared it for you, so that's awesome. She guess relates to your thing, and then totally shared. So we want to thank Sarah for watching, and Sarah sharing. She's a continuous watcher on that particular regard. So any final comments to our audience before we close out for the evening?
I just want to say, just thank you, Daniel. Thank you for having me on here. I think it is so important for all of us to be loud and be proud, not only about our military service, but the things that we do every day. And as we continue to kind of challenge our paradigms and challenge our mindsets, I continue to encourage everyone to speak kindly to yourself and speak kindly to yourself often, because you never know what the person from the left and right is going through. And I think kindness is a great party message, especially in the current climate that we find ourselves, is to treat others with kindness and to continue to be positive, not only with yourself, but with others, and progress will march on. So I appreciate everyone watching.
That's awesome potting. So we will be kind to all, and we will see you guys tomorrow. Thank you for your time, audience, and thank you, Ashley.
Thank you.